This week's video is about a heavy and sensitive topic. How do you deal with unwanted sexual attention? What do you do if somebody's coming on to you in a sexual way, either at work or in your personal life, and it makes you uncomfortable?
And interestingly enough, Sandy, this can be people saying sexual or inappropriate things to you, and it's anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. And it's still kind of a type of sexual advance when they make comments or you get that creep vibe from someone. And even, oh, I hate this, the look up and down that can be very suggestive. Ugh, comments. My name is Teresa Byrne, and this topic is incredibly close to home for me. I am a certified self-defense instructor and also a master instructor in martial arts, and was teaching self-defense on Spike TV for 5 different series. And personal protection is so very important to me. And this is one of the reasons that I teach how to have healthy physical and emotional boundaries for all your relationships. And it's really, truly my mission to help women own their space physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually.
So important. And I'm Sandy Weiner, and this topic is really close to home for me too, as a dating and love coach for single women over 40. This is something that comes up all the time in terms of emotional boundaries. So Teresa's more about the physical and emotional, and I deal mostly with the emotional boundaries when people make sexual advances in dating in any kind of way. So Teresa and I are also the co-founders and co-creators of the Boundaries for Beautiful Relationships program that is relaunching again in March of this year. With the Me Too movement, there's been a lot more messaging in the news and in social media about women who faced unwanted sexual attention or advances in a personal or professional setting. I am so happy that women are finally feeling heard and empowered to step up and say, this is what happened to me, and it's not okay.
So from my research in self-defense, I look at situations and I research the backdrop of the Me Too movement. There's a few simple pieces that I want to outline. One is all of the perpetrators were people in positions of power, and they'd either set the stage, which is called grooming, or they would have a surprise grab or a comment or an advance in the moment. So a lot of times these are very powerful men, it could be women as well, who want to feel naughty. And by feeling naughty, they're like, what can I get away with? What can I do? What can I make you uncomfortable? What are you going to do if I get uncomfortable? And they would feel almost this version of I'm untouchable, as if what they did to other people didn't matter. People were objects for them to play with or do something with, make them feel uncomfortable. And they got kind of their jollies off of it. And not all of them were conscious as to what they were doing. Some of them were very unconscious and would just react by grabbing a woman or suggesting something. And that's uncomfortable too. So why are we talking about dealing with unwanted sexual advances? It's all about consent. And what is consent and why does it matter? What's important about it? Consent is permission. So it's what you give permission to, what you say okay to. And it's an agreement, it's approval, it's compliance. So when you give consent, you're saying, yes, that is also what I want to someone or something, because it is what you want to. When you don't react or respond to a boundary pusher or someone who's pushing up against your boundaries, it's likely that they'll go further. Most predators or perpetrators are looking to see how you respond, if you respond. And if you don't do anything, they will take your passivity as compliance or tacit agreement.
God, this is such a big issue. I can feel myself as you're talking, Teresa, getting like hot under the collar. Like I want to protect women's hearts and not let them be the victims of this kind of boundary pushing anymore. So how do we handle this challenging boundary violation? Most of us do one of two things. We either ignore it and hope it goes away, or we freeze because we're not sure what we're supposed to do. But why is it so hard to know what to do in the moment? Well, we have an adrenal response. It's something we can't even really totally control. It's something that happens in our bodies, and it triggers our emotions, which overrides your rational thinking. And our studies have shown that if you are a codependent, you have been conditioned to please other people. So when a man makes an unwanted sexual advance, your first response is to make sure you don't come across as mean, because you're always taught you have to be nice no matter what. Some women are so confused by sexual advances because on the surface, it can feel flattering. That man finds you sexy, he finds you attractive. And if you've been alone for a long time and you haven't felt very sexy, it can feel really good. If this is true for you, I want you to make sure to take a few moments to process so you don't have an automatic response or lack of response that you're going to regret later on. Ask yourself, is this something I want, or am I acting out of obligation or fear?
Oh, great question. Now, where do these unwanted sexual advances happen? They happen everywhere. The big example of Me Too was in the workplace. And so you'll have people that are bosses or people in a position of power. It might be among work friends, colleagues, clients, or even potential clients. How do you handle a potential client? You're trying to get a sale, or you're trying to move forward in a business arrangement, and someone's saying something suggestive or inappropriate. How do you deal with that? It can also be people in positions of power, which we've talked about in another video. In church groups, leaders of churches, or people in workshops. You're in workshops or spiritual workshops with gurus. It can happen with coaches or therapists. And it could even happen socially. Friends, acquaintances, or friends of friends, or even husbands of friends. And it's all about the inappropriateness. So it's what you feel is uncomfortable. It's something inappropriate that happens. A look, an action, a word, it doesn't matter. And it can be physical advances, but can also be a brush by, it can be a flyby, it can be someone being too close to you in your space. It can just be a look, like that look up and down. It can be a comment, an off-color comment, or a rude joke that is completely inappropriate. And anything that pushes your boundaries, or, and this is a weird one, but when they touch themselves, oftentimes predator, perpetrator, Harvey Weinstein was famous for touching himself and watching how people reacted.
Ugh.
I know, it's just an ew.
So many oohs. Yeah, I mean, I had an experience with a friend's husband once when I was very young, and it really freaked me out. So this happens to most of us, and many times we don't know what to do. So in my work as a dating coach, I come across this on dates. So how does it show up on dates? It can show up at the beginning of a date. How does a person greet you? Do they hug you? Maybe you don't want to be hugged. Maybe you want to be kissed. Maybe you don't want to be kissed on the cheek. Handshake might seem weird to you. You get to decide before the date how you want to interact with this man that you're meeting for the first time. What about a guy who wants to sit next to you in the booth? You're having sushi and he sits too close. I had that happen to me, right? Oh, can I touch you here? Can I touch you there? No. Getting in a car before you know somebody on a first date. Ladies, don't do this. It's unsafe. Even if you feel that you've made a bond with him, you've had a nice phone call, you don't know him until you've developed trust. So a guy who asks you to meet somewhere private, or he sends sexual advances by text. There's the classic dick pics, which, and the so-called sexy photos, you know, men in varying degrees of undress, or women sending sexy photos, being sexually inappropriate with your languaging. And one thing that I heard from Matthew Hussey, which is, he's a dating coach who has a great line for people who get sexy too fast in a text. And maybe they're a good person, but you could say something like, oh, I think you're confusing me with somebody you've been in a relationship with for a while. So, you know, you're letting him know, hey, we're not there. So think of your safety when you set up a date, when you're on a date. Don't let a man coerce you into having dessert at his house, inviting you for dinner on a second date when you don't really know him. I mean, I have been invited to, I can't even tell you how many dates, go for a hike on a first date in a secluded place when I don't know the man. It's not happening. So you need to set those boundaries.
I love your boundaries, Sandy. You're a great example. For those of you who don't know, Sandy's a fantastic example. She's got great boundaries.
Thank you.
Boundary crossing and unwanted sexual advances can also happen when you're in a relationship with someone. It might be that they want sex and you don't. You might just not be in the mood. Or it might be that you've been arguing and he tries to make up by having sex with you and you haven't resolved the conflict. That's such a difficult place to be. You want to feel loving and you want to feel comfy and you don't want to feel like you have to put all those things away to have sex. Or it could be that the things that he wants to do sexually don't feel comfortable to you. And it's okay to say, no, that's not going to work for me. How about this? And we'll give you some scripts, but it's okay not to feel pressured.
I can't tell you how many women have kindness sex to keep the peace in the home.
Sex.
Yes.
Is that like pity sex, Sandy?
It's like pity sex, but it's sort of keep the peace sex. Because if you make him happy and just have sex when you don't want to, he'll be nice to you the next day. I used to interview my married friends and they would all have these stories of having sex when they didn't want it. So yeah, you have choices, ladies. So I'm going to share our downloadable checklist with you. We call our way of dealing with this type of boundary violation, no means no. So again, you don't have to take notes. We have a downloadable button both here under the video and in our blogs. And so no means no. And this is important. So we want you to learn these steps for empowerment. Step number 1 is to build trust. It takes time to build trust with people, so take your time. You need to know that whether it's a business relationship or a personal relationship, it takes time to know somebody's character. So don't be afraid to take the time and not jump because they said you should. Look at consistent actions, not just words. Step number 2 is be in public. So that's for personal and business again. Don't meet anybody in private until you have built trust with them. And number 3 is be aware. Be aware. Your intuition is brilliant. Pay attention to your reaction to that person, to what they're saying, what they're doing. How do you feel around them? Predators use a lack of awareness to their advantage.
The next step, step number 4, is be powerful. So you can use your posture. I always recommend that women have their shoulders back. Don't hunch forward. Use your posture, stand in your power, and make sure that you make eye contact. If someone says something inappropriate, you look at them and use your voice. Say whatever script it is that you are comfortable saying. One of the reasons Sandy and I come up with scripts is because when you're adrenalized, it's difficult to think creatively. So posture and voice, use your voice. The other thing you want to do is take a stance. So you're going to use your body. And your body is going to stand strong and you're going to stand upright. You're going to make sure that you've got that eye contact and you're going to show using your hands. If someone's coming too close to you or they're saying something inappropriate, put up your hands and use one of the scripts that we give you. But this gesture alone will save you all kinds of trouble because it's saying stop. So take a stance and this will help you physically and mentally. You're taking a stance saying, what I want is important and that's not okay. So I'm going to be comfortable saying whatever script I use. And the last one is you can also learn the power of silence. I had a client who was a young girl in college and she was very well endowed and she was also a second-degree black belt. She worked at a jewelry store. Now, she would have men coming in her father's age or older and they would make inappropriate comments to her as a jewelry store clerk, which I thought was disgusting. But it wasn't an appropriate place for her to jump over the counter and sidekick him in the gut. These were clients and they were coming for business reasons. So I taught her how to use something I call the power of silence. So when a man would say something inappropriate about whatever, she would just stop and she would leave the comment there. It was beautiful. She would just stop and she would look at them and she would say, she wouldn't even say anything. She would just look and leave that awkward silence hanging. And 10 times out of 10, the men would start to backpedal. They would start to feel uncomfortable. You can also use the power of silence if someone's texting you inappropriately or emailing you inappropriately or messaging inappropriate things. Just let it be there. Let them figure out what's going on.
I love that. I love the silent text. It can drive somebody crazy, but it also helps you to take back some of the processing time to decide, like, how am I going to deal with this? Sometimes, like, the initial response is, oh my God, he texted that. And then you sleep on it and come back to it the next day and go, maybe it's just not, maybe I read into that, or maybe it's as bad as I thought. And maybe I have to block and delete this person. So again, that's another way of putting space between you and that person. Love the power of silence. Love all these tips that Teresa just shared. And as Teresa said, you must use your voice and respond in some way. Either use your voice and use a script, or be silent. So if you're using a script, we have some scripts to share with you in the free download. We're not going to share them on the video, but you can download the copy of our checklist. And in our course coming up in March, we have so many more scripts. We are the script queens. We love giving scripts because this is where people really struggle. Like, what do I say? Especially when you have that adrenal response.
We are scriptalicious. I'll tell you what. So, I want to thank you for watching. And I also want to throw a statistic at you. The World Health Organization estimates that 1 in 3 women will be the victim of sexual assault or sexual abuse in her lifetime. So it's more common than we realize. And I want to thank you for taking the time out to learn about this. Please download our free checklist. No means no, because you know what? No means no. And if this video has helped you, or if you've gotten some tidbits and nuggets of information that you think might help someone else, please share it. We'd love the comments, but we really want to help other women through some of the most challenging boundary situations.